Well, good morning. I want to welcome you all to this power session. And I always begin these with my thanks to the Portsmouth Chamber of Commerce, the Ashland Alliance, the Ohio University Southern, and the Maysville Chamber of Commerce. These folks graciously share and market this. It's a free seminar, but they put the word out, and that's why we have such great turnouts. I am serving as also the host this morning because Lisa had a board meeting she had to be at, so I'll be a little bit distracted every now and then letting people in the door. But I think we have a wonderful topic this morning, ambition versus contentment. As far as signups and registrations, there's been more interest in this topic than any topic I've ever done, which is kind of surprising to me. I think all my topics are wonderful, but this one is interesting, and I have a very exciting model to share with you to help give us this some context and some thought. So the question that's on the table for us in the big picture is, what do you really want? And I think when people look at, ambition versus contentment, that's where their head is when is enough enough? And is it good to be content? I think those of us that like to achieve and like to get things done and like to be helpful and like to make a difference, sometimes we may view contentment as an enemy. And on the other hand, discontentment and ambition and being driven to even goal driven, even for some good things, sometimes we get overwhelmed and overrun people and maybe become people we don't want to be when we're ambitious. So we're going to sort through this today and really just give you about an hour or so here to give it some thought. And I'm going to provide some of my thoughts, and again, a great model for you to consider this. So let's get started here. I am Dave Beam. I am your trainer today. I've been married for 35 years. It'll be 36 this October. Glad to say it's happily married. My first year was horrible, and my wife would agree. But through the grace of God and just through being together that number of years and working through issues, we are very, very happily married. I am the granddaddy of all granddaddies. I have 6 grandchildren. That's a self-proclaimed title, and I try to live up to it whenever I can. I love to play Tyros 5 keyboard. That's by Yamaha. It is my escape. I go to a special place with my keyboard and spend some time. And so that is what that's about. I own my own business. I used to be an Action Coach franchise. I left the franchise a couple of years ago. I'm now self-employed owner of Beam Business Services for the past 18 years, have helped literally hundreds of organizations and businesses, thousands of people, and it has just been a blessed career and experience. I'm a mentor, trainer, speaker, and coach. I'm also a biblical counselor. I help people with marriage issues, personal issues from a spiritual perspective, and love doing that as well. And what ties all of that together is I have a passion to help people like you. I love to help people, and I would imagine that most of you, if not all of you on this call, feel the same way, and that's why you're here. So let me give you actually 4 rules of the game. I always start my presentations with this because I think going into something like this, you're giving up an hour of your life basically to be here. And I want you to get the most out of it. So Dave, how do I get the most out of this presentation? If you will agree to and adhere to these 4 rules, I believe that will happen. The first one is you need to embrace an ownership mindset. Now that certainly applies to today's presentation, but I think it applies to life. And what do I mean by being an owner? Well, the opposite of being an owner, the antithesis of being an owner, is being a victim, which means just put on the handcuffs. I can't control anything. It's totally abdicating my responsibility and just saying, what can I do about it? But an owner says, what can I do about it? There's that little inflection and change that says, I can do something about it. I want to learn what I can do about it. I want to take ownership of it. I want to be responsible for my life. I want to be accountable for my life. I want to make a difference. And I don't want to be a victim by blaming other people, making excuses, or worst of all, just denying the whole thing and ignoring my problems. So if you're ready to step up and really go for it today, that's what I call ownership. Another way to look at that is just participate 100%. You know, I had a fifth grade teacher, Miss Abel, that used to kind of yell at us, and there were some stress and anxiety issues in that class because she was a tough one. But she used to say, Mr. Beam, you get out of life what you put into life. Put 100% into this hour, you'll get 100% back. Just make that agreement with yourself. Third, don't be a know-it-all. In fact, the best way to get the most out of today is just to be curious. And as soon as you find yourself drifting into that I know mindset, well, I know, I already heard this, or I know what he's saying, that's danger. That's a danger area because you're starting to shut down. You're telling your biocomputer, you don't need to pay attention to that. You already know that. And we all know what it's like to be around know-it-alls. People who know everything about anything. They really are not too open-minded to learn anything because they're telling themselves they already know. Well, the fact is, friends, let's say you know a lot about a certain subject. Well, I'm going to say all of us probably have our favorite subjects that we know something about. If you look at the total collection of information and what can be known about a particular subject, and you take that subject that's the one that you know about, how much do you really know about that compared with what can be known? Well, if we're humble at all, we would admit not very much. So really, when we drop the I know, we're just being real. We're just saying we don't know. Anything we do know is very little. So come into this with an I don't know. I'm just curious. I'm just interested. I'm just here to learn. I'm not telling you to throw away everything you've ever learned. I'm just saying set it aside and open your mind up to some new things or some different things, or even some things that will just validate some things you already believe. And then finally, if we're not having fun, we're doing something wrong. So in this Zoom context, Zoom fun is different than being in the room with people. I can have a lot more fun, I think, and believe when I'm in the room with people, because there's a whole lot more interaction. So how do you have fun on a Zoom 1 hour Zoom call? You're just going to have to put up with my sarcasm and my comments and my smiles. And that's how we're going to have fun today. So let's jump into this. Let's review the rules. Own it. Don't be a victim. Second thing here is participate 100%. Agree to give it your all for this next hour, your full attention. Take some notes. Third, drop your I know. Get rid of the know-it-all attitude or the idea that I know what's going on, or I know what he's going to say, or I've heard this before, and just say, isn't this interesting? I'm going to open my mind and consider these things. And lastly, let's have some fun. So if you're ready to go, I'm ready to go. Okay, first question. Coaches ask great questions. What is it all about? I'm not going to sing Alfie to you. What's it all about, Alfie? I'm not going to sing that song, but I am asking that question. What is it all about? And what do you really want? Friends, we move along through life so fast. The pace of life, I think COVID has slowed us down a bit, and it's been awkward for a lot of people. Spending more time at home, more face-to-face time with the same people every day, family members, etc. It's been a culture shock a little bit. But the fact is, most life in America is go, 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 go. And when you go, 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 you don't really think too much. You don't really do a lot of reflection. And we're taking this 1 hour to just set aside this time in the middle of the week and asking ourselves some good questions. And I'm asking you some good questions. And here's my question. What is it really all about? And what do you really want? If we're trying to look at ambition and contentment, those are important questions. And I don't think many of us have taken the time to really sit down and take some space and some time and maybe even a couple of days away somewhere and really ask those two questions. What do you really want? It's the formula B times do equals have. That's another, I love simplicity. I love simple things, maybe because I'm kind of a simple guy. I understand things when they're clear and simple. And that formula says to me, well, if I was going to start with that formula, I'd start with the word have. What do I really want to have? When you get some clarity around that, then the next question you're going to ask is, what do I need to do to have that? You know, lazy people that have zero ambition and never do anything don't have things. And it seems that more and more people are wanting things handed to them. But if you want to have some things, there's some things you need to do to have what you want to have. The deeper root question is, who do you need to be to do the things you need to do to have the things you really want? If I plant an apple tree, I plant an apple tree probably because I want to have apples. So what creates the apples? The tree creates the apples. The branches and the leaves and the photosynthesis and the process creates the apples. That's what it does. That's what an apple tree does. But where does that essence or that identity of that tree come? It comes from the root. The fruit is an expression of the root. The root is where the tree starts, out of the seed. That's the identity of the tree. And the identity of the tree gets expressed in the fruit that it produces. What you have, in large part, expresses who you are. What you say and how you act around people tells me something about your identity and who you are, your root. In an organization, I think the root is core values. What are those non-negotiable things? What are those most important things? What is this organization all about? And then, what is the fruit or the production from this organization that's going to reflect that mission and those values? Why are we starting here? Well, when you're trying to determine how ambitious should I be and how content should I be, I think that all gets rooted back to this question. What is it all about and what do you really want? I think that's going to help you determine the answer to those questions. So I'm just going to give you all a moment to think about that, to get that snapshot of that little flip chart in your head and give that question some consideration. In fact, just to fully participate on this, maybe you need to write down something. If you got a pencil and a paper or pen and a paper, what do you really want? Just write down something right now that you'd really like to have. And then we're going to look at this rest of this presentation in light of that question and that answer. Okay, let me move on. A lot of people want peace. A lot of people want inner peace. A lot of people are anxious and fearful and turned up, amped up right now. And it's certainly understandable. In the culture and the climate we're in, it just seems that things are more and more chaotic and moving different directions. And if you don't really have that root and you don't really know what you really want and what it's all about, you might lack some peace. And so what you might say today is, Dave, what I'm looking for when I think about ambition and then I think about contentment, if I'm moving toward that contentment side, I'm looking for some inner peace. Well, let's look at the root of inner peace. I think inner peace comes from integrity. Now, this could be a little bit offensive if you don't really listen to me carefully. So just don't have the I know here and put that aside and just find this interesting. Let's look at the word integrity for a moment. There is a root word that goes with the word integrity. That basic root word for integrity is integer. Isn't that interesting? What is an integer? Well, if you remember your early math, it's not a fraction. It's a whole number, keyword, whole number. That's why I've put the number 1 up there on the slide. It represents number 1, the digit 1 is a whole number. That's not 1/2 or 1/4 or 1/8. It's a complete whole number. So we're talking about integrity, which is an expression of wholeness. What's on the outside is on the inside. I don't live a double life. What my values are is what my life is. My fruit reflects my root. You can look at my fruit and tell who I am. You can look at my life. You can look at my words. You can look at my actions and know me, because what's inside is what's outside. I have integrity. I am whole. And I'm single-minded. There's no fraction there. There's no duplicity there. There's no conflict there within me. If you want inner peace, you need to be whole on the inside. You need to have integrity. You need to have no fraction of thinking. You need to be single-minded. As a coach, what I help people do, and as a counselor, I help people with this as well. I help them slow down and start to consider what they really want. What are their true values? And how can they get their life in line through habits and behavior change and thinking change to be whole with what those values are, so that people can have that contentment and that peace. If you're looking for an inner peace, you need to look for a harmony, a oneness, a completeness inside. And that's what that's on there for. Again, we're just dancing around this idea of ambition versus contentment. I'll let you just soak in that lesson a little bit, and we'll move on to the next one. Okay. Now we're going to go a little bit further. We're going to talk about this balloon. Now, if you've been on the Dave Beam track and you've come to some of these, you've seen this balloon. This isn't a new lesson, but I have added a little phrase in there. This is a lesson in personal presence. One of my famous granddaddy stories is this happened like probably 6 or 7 years ago. It was about this time of year. And my wife came to me in the middle of a Wednesday that wasn't particularly busy. And I'm here in my own business. And she said, the grandkids want to go feed the ducks out at Lake Roosevelt. And I said, wow, I'm in my own business. I can do that. So what does a good business coach, small business owner do? He grabs his phone and he gets in the car and he starts to drive out to Lake Roosevelt with the grandkids to feed the ducks. Stale bread, wife is there, grandkids are acting up. It's a wonderful, beautiful fall day. What does granddaddy of all granddaddies notice on the way to Lake Roosevelt? He notices that he doesn't have phone service. You ever left your phone somewhere? You ever lost your phone? Do you have all those emotions and that experience? Can you relate? Well, that's what was going on. I get to the parking lot of Lake Roosevelt. I'm already fidgeting with my phone because I have no signal right there in the car. The kids get out with my wife and go down to feed the ducks, and I walk around like a madman in the lot with my hand up in the air, trying to get a signal to make sure that I don't miss any of those imperative, important calls that I assumed I'd be able to get. I mean, the only reason I would leave my job at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Wednesday in the fall and go with my grandkids to feed ducks is because I could really multitask and stay connected with my business. But now we've got a crisis. And in the middle of all that craziness, I hear a voice from the lake. I hear a voice from my grandson who calls out to me and says, Granddaddy, are you going to feed the ducks? Folks, what do you really want? What really is important? In the light of eternity, in the light of the size of the universe, in the light of all that goes on, what really does matter? And in that moment of time, on that day, I had a grandson and a granddaughter and a beautiful wife feeding ducks, and I was running around like a madman in the parking lot trying to get a signal on my phone. I was not present. I was squandering a beautiful afternoon and day that I'd been given by my own lack of presence and my ambition. I thought, how can I miss a call? How can I be irresponsible? Years of programming, years of habit, years of not being present and being consumed with an ambition to do a good job. Now, is there good things about that? There's good things about that. But I'm telling you that I lost my connection with a personal presence. And this lesson that we're going to look at, the balloon, is about this idea of personal presence. So let's look at the balloon. Let's just allow it here to rise onto the scene. Let's talk about a hot air balloon. I want you to get this lesson of personal presence. Because, folks, we're not guaranteed tomorrow. Maybe people are a little more aware of that these days. And we certainly can't do anything about the past other than learn from it because it's over. So all we really have is right now. And that's a gift, that presence. And 2-year-olds get that. 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds get what we don't get because they don't have a lot of baggage. They live in the moment. And if you're a granddaddy or you're a grandparent or you're a parent and you have young children, you know how they are. They live for the present moment. And if they're dry and if they're fed and if they've had a nap, they're up because that is their nature as a human being without all that baggage, is to be up and very engaged and very present with the present moment. 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds don't live in the future and they don't live in the past. They hardly have a past. They live in the present moments. They feed ducks. Let's go to the typical adult, you and me. Is our balloon up in the air? Do we have a high sense of presence and consciousness in our world with the people around us and the issues that we're dealing with? Not most of us. Most of us have these things going on. We have sandbags that hold us down. What are those sandbags? Past regrets. You know, your past doesn't exist anymore. Your past is over. The only place your past exists is between your ears. And yet many people with the baggage in between their ears about their past keeps them out of the present moment. They have no presence in today's life. And today, the life that I've been given today, because they have sandbags. They have sandbags of resentment, of unforgiveness, of hard feelings, of self. They just beat themselves up, self-regret, personal regret, negativity, tragedy in their past, how they've been harmed and hurt in the past. They carry all this baggage, and it takes that beautiful hot air balloon and it just keeps it on the ground. It can't really get up there into the clouds and really soar. And there's something else that keeps a balloon on the ground. It's these ropes and these tethers. Now, it's good for those to be there when you're getting in the basket to hold that balloon steady. But once it's ready to fly, those tethers need to go away. What are the tethers? Well, folks, the sandbags are the past. The tethers are the future. This is where this ambition word comes in. People have their goals. They have their dreams. I'm a coach. I teach about goals and dreams. I think we're beautiful human beings that are created with the ability to imagine and to dream and to have aspirations and to have ambition. But folks, it can become an obsession. It can come to the place that those ropes take your presence and the beauty of today and the beauty of the moment, and it pulls you away from that. And your balloon is held down to the ground. I'm calling on people today to consider getting rid of some of those bags from the past and to drop some of that ambition and that drive for the future, and to take a breath and feed some ducks, to take a breath and be present with the people you care about, the team that you're working with, the family that you've been blessed to have, the friends that you have. People are really all that matters. If you really want to get down to it, that's all that's going to last. The rest of this is going to pass away. And all you have is today. And if you want to have a full consciousness and presence with today, you need to deal with those tethers and those sandbags. And that's what I'm here to help you do today. And I'm going to give you a model that's going to show you very clearly, I think, how to do that, how to help you do that. Here's my statement at the bottom. We live our lives one day at a time. Don't miss today. Don't miss the moment, because before you know it, it's going to be over. And if you miss one day after another, just because you're so consumed with the past or tied up in future aspiration, life is over and you've missed it. I don't want you to miss it. I want you to savor every moment, every present moment with every person that you meet today. And let that balloon rise to the clouds and soar in a high level of consciousness. So let's talk about the state of consciousness. If we're going to talk about ambition versus contentment, we need to really understand those emotional words and where they lie. And I think those are states of consciousness. And so I've got a model here. On the y-axis, we've got low and high consciousness. So high on this chart is a high consciousness, like the balloon. Low on this chart is low consciousness. What do I mean by consciousness? It's that sense of presence, personal connectedness, personal awareness. That's what we're talking about. On the x-axis, there's an intensity of my consciousness. I'm either very, very amped up and intense, or I'm very, very laid back and quiet. So if you take those two axes and you look at this chart, I'm going to bring it in here. I'm going to look at it as a half circle here, semicircle, and there's three different sections on this circle. The section that has a balanced intensity with a high level of consciousness, we're going to call the state of being engaged. And just hang in there with me, because you're going to see how this connects to ambition versus contentment. But the engaged state on this model is right there in the middle of the circle at the apex, at the higher level. That's the highest level of consciousness, is the engaged level. And there's a little bit of a spectrum there. You can see that. Now on the left side, the low intensity, low consciousness is the disconnected state. That's where people start to zone out and they're not participating and they've kind of lost their way. And then we've got the overwhelmed state. Probably most of us on the call could relate a little more to that one, but that's when we have a super high level of intensity. And because of that intensity and running around that parking lot with the phone in the air, I've lost my engagement with the present and I've become overwhelmed. It's the fight or flight box. It's the high cortisol box. The adrenaline is through the roof, and I'm not engaging with the current present state of consciousness that's high. My consciousness drops off because the hormones have taken over. Now, there's a whole spectrum on here that I want you to follow with me, and this is where the real lesson is today. So just want you to really track with this, really stay connected with me and stay very present. I put present at the very top of consciousness. It's when I did choose to put the stupid phone in the car and go down there and stand at the lake with my grandchildren and my wife and feed the ducks. It's when you decide to sit down with that employee that's struggling and put all your turn your computer off, get away from it, and sit down and truly listen. It's when you listen to a customer's complaint and you really care about them from the heart. It's when you think about your wife and your spouse and how loyal she's been and how wonderful she is, and you truly allow yourself to love her, not just outwardly, but in your mind and in your thinking. It's when you look at your teenage child that's struggling and you're not angry, and you're not overwhelmed and upset, and you're not just given up and been disconnected, but you get re-engaged. Folks, this is where it's at. This is when you have a team at work that's struggling through all these changes and all this chaos that's going on, and you as a leader get really engaged and present with them. They can look to you. You're not absent. You're not disconnected, and you're not absent by being overwhelmed. You're present. That's the highest level of consciousness on this model. If you go a little bit towards the disconnected side, but still very engaged, you're curious. Curiosity means I maybe am questioning a little bit, but I'm still very present with what's going on. Curiosity is still a great state to be in. And then focused is a little more intense. Focused is a state of mind in the engagement side where we hone in on particulars. We're probably not looking as much at the big picture at this point, but we're looking a little bit more at specifics. So we're really getting a little more intense and focused. All three of those states of consciousness are very engaged and very productive and very good. And I think what you need to look at with this model is this is a pulse. We're moving from left to right to left to right. And if we kind of keep that harmony and that pulse at the top, we stay engaged. Now let's look at the edge between engagement and disconnection. That's where our word for today comes in, contentment. Contentment. Is it wrong to be content? No, it's not wrong to be content, but it is on a slippery slope, on the top of a slippery slope. When we start to get content, there is a temptation and a tendency to start to fall off to the disconnected side. So I put ambition or ambitious at the other side of contentment. It's getting a little bit towards the overwhelmed side. Is it wrong to be ambitious, Dave? I think it's dangerous. I don't think it's wrong, and I think it's got its place. And as we're going in this pulse, left to right, we're moving from a state of contentment to a state of ambition. And in the middle, we're staying present, curious, and focused. I think all of that is a healthy place to be, a productive place to be. And there's some change back and forth. But what happens when we move beyond ambition and contentment? What happens to start? Well, content people can move into laziness. Laziness is when I start to shut down. How about vacation, Dave? Maybe there's even a time to be a little bit lazy and recharge. But you know, in our laziness, sometimes we do things that discharge us and don't recharge us. I'm saying that laziness is starting to get a little bit dangerous. I'm starting to slide down that left slope towards a very disconnected state. Do I really want to take a day and be lazy the whole day? Do I truly want to just check out of what's going on? That's a good question for you to ask. And if we go to the other side, to the overwhelmed side below ambition, it's when I get so ambitious that I start to get irritated. Irritated starts to move into a realm of judgment. I start to judge people and attack people and not the problem. And so on one side, when I start to move away from presence, I start to get irritated and overwhelmed. And on the other side, I start to get content and then maybe disconnect and become lazy. Now, I'm going to take a breath here and let you all look at what we've got so far and ask yourself the question, what in the world is Dave talking about and why does this matter to me? Well, folks, I like these kinds of charts and this simplicity to kind of use as a mirror to kind of figure out where I'm at, what's going on in my state of consciousness. If I have a sense that something isn't where it should be or I'm not where I want to be, I need something to look at to kind of help me get my bearings. I like this chart for that reason. I can see, well, if I don't feel engaged, am I going to the lazy side, the contentment side, or am I going towards the ambition to the point that I'm irritated? So where can lazy lead us to? A very, very dangerous place for an organization, for a team, for a leader, is to become apathetic. I get so worn out, I get so burned out, I get so sick and tired of dealing with people and with problems that I just start to not care anymore. If you've got an employee, if you've got a team member, if it's you, Danger Will Robinson, you are falling off the edge. You are becoming very disconnected. Back at the level of contentment, you should have been aware that, wow, maybe I need to get a little curious and a little more present and kind of track back up the other way. Because if I start to slip here and get lazy, I might slip into apathy. On the other side, if I'm getting ambitious, I'm getting goal driven, I'm getting focused on that future. You know, the right side tends to be the future path and the left side tends to be the past, and the middle is the present. Isn't that interesting? And on the right side, if I start to get overly irritated and judgmental of my team and of situations, a little bit of self-pity, then I can start to get anxious. I put the opposite of apathy as being anxious. I'm upset, I'm worried, I'm obsessed about what might occur and what's happening. What's the problem with anxiety? Well, when those hormones are raging in my system, I've lost my presence. I've lost my focus. I've lost my curiosity and my possibility thinking. And I'm starting to drift into an overwhelm. Hope you can see this model. My intensity is increasing. On the other side, my intensity is languishing. I move from an apathetic state to a detached state. This is when not only do I not care, I quit participating. I drop out. This is when I basically quit. Some of you have team members that have detached. As a leader, you need to do something. As a leader, you owe it to them and to yourself to do something. Apathetic, detached people end up, we'll see in a minute, depressed. But you also got people, maybe you're in this category where you're ambitious, but you become irritated because of your ambition and your goals. And now you're anxious about that and you're worried about it happening. And then you become very frustrated. I put the other side of detachment as frustration. Frustration is that high level of judgment and irritation and aggravation with other people. It's where I get into the blame game and I start to really get resentful and hard-hearted towards other people and situations. Gratitude is out the window at this point. And as far as being present and enjoying the day and loving people, that is gone. At this point, I am consumed with the problem and I am frustrated because I'm not getting what I want. And folks, we've all been there. We're human beings. I'm not beating you up if you're there now. I'm just saying the first step to curing any problem is recognizing it. Look at the chart. Look at your intensity. Look at your level of consciousness. Understand that you're the best leader, the best employee, the best contributor, the best person when you're present, curious, and focused. And if you're in these other states, you need to find a way to get those tethers cut and get that balloon up in the air. So what is the lowest level on this chart? It's depression. Now, there's a lot we could say about depression. Many people see it as a disease. There are certainly biochemical things that happen that can cause depression, and I'm not beating anybody up, but my view of depression is if it's related to what's going on in life, that you've probably slipped down this slope. I have been depressed in my past. I have been detached and to the point that I was almost catatonic years and years ago, and I was captured and victimized and completely consumed in my disconnection and self-centeredness. It happens. It happens. And I'm telling you here as a warning that if you're in a contented state, that's not bad. Even a little bit of laziness is appropriate sometimes, but be careful. You start to enjoy the laziness too much, you end up apathetic, detached, and depressed because you're no longer useful. You're no longer making a difference. You no longer have purpose. You no longer have a call. You no longer have a goal. You no longer have an ambition. And you've lost all that. And you're no longer engaged and you're disconnected. And then finally over here, what happens to the frustrated person that doesn't deal with it? They become enraged. You ever seen an angry person consumed with their anger and their rage and their resentment? It's an ugly thing. Have you ever been that person? I have. It is a low, low level of consciousness. You really don't care about anybody but yourself when you're in that enraged state of mind. So I just want you to take a look at this. And again, at the end, if you want to email me, I'd be glad to send you a copy of this, a PDF of this, so you can have it. But it's just a great mirror for you to look at from time to time to determine what is your state of consciousness. Am I feeding the ducks with my grandchildren? Am I engaging with my employees and caring about people? Am I making the main thing the main thing? Am I living my life day by day in a way that I would be good with when I die? You know, folks, we need to begin with the end in mind. We need to consider that life is going to be gone before we know it. Are we in an engaged state of mind most every day? And if I'm not, what can I do about it? How can I get some help? How can I get some coaching? How can I do some practical things to get my state of consciousness back up? Am I going to be a victim to this? I tell you, when you get over to that enraged state, you get to that depressed state, sometimes folks become a victim. They just feel like they're caught and they can't get loose. I'm telling you, there's help. I'm telling you, there's a way to get free of that and to get back up in the top. Quit being so proud. Quit being just feeling guilty that you can't get out of this hole. Reach out. And I'm not just talking to you, I'm talking to your team through you. As a leader, we need to learn the skills. We need to learn how to communicate. We need to learn how to engage with people and help them get that balloon back up in the air. We're not pop psychologists. We're not trying to make everybody a psychologist. This is just common sense life skills that we as people, as mature people that care about people, can help others get re-engaged in life and move up to a level of ambition and contentment that is surrounded by curiosity, presence, and focus. Folks, life is too short to spend our time anxious, frustrated, or enraged, or apathetic, detached, and depressed. Those are low levels. Life is too short. Get back on top of this semicircle and then help some other people get there. If you want help with that, that's my calling. That's my job. That's what I do, is I help people get up on that engaged part of the circle. All right, I'm going to kind of bring this around the corner and start to close it down with this, another familiar chart that I've used. If you've been around, you've seen this, but we're going to look at that in the context of what we've been looking at. There's the line, and at the left hand of the line, we've got your past. So you can guess what's in the middle. It's the present. And you can guess what's at the right now. You're really getting onto this. It's the default future. And the reason I call it default is because it's at the same level of performance and outcome as the past. So it is the place that you will default to. You talk about a default setting on a computer or a default setting on a phone. It's just what it does if you don't mess with it. If you just leave it alone, this is where it ends up. Now, actually, I would probably put the default future a little bit lower. If we just don't deal with things and don't address things, they don't stay the same, they go downhill. But for the sake of this, what I want you to see is something very interesting. And as people think about their future and they think about what they're going, they usually set goals and ambition in terms of their past experience. They take their thoughts and their experiences and their knowledge from the past, and they bring it into their present and plan a future that looks a little better than the past. So if you're catching me there, we are creating a future much like the past because we go to the past to get our thinking. And this model proposes something a little bit different. That as we come back to the middle in the present, we go to a different place called the created future. Now, this is an interesting concept, but I think it's life-changing. It can really shake your world in a good way. As human beings, we have the ability to leave our present and go to the past and the future. We've been looking at that today. And I'm saying this is a good use of that ability, that we can go to some place other than a future that looks like the past. We can go to a much better future, and we can take the thinking and the feelings and the emotional presence of that experience in the future that we're imagining and bring that dream, bring that feeling, bring that concept, bring that mentality back to our present and start to plan our future and experience our present in light of a created future instead of in light of a default future. Most of the population, most human beings think about the future like the past, and therefore they act accordingly, they behave accordingly, they perform accordingly, and they end up in a default future that looks much like the past. And they say, well, I told you that would happen. See, I was right. And then they pat themselves on the back because they said, yeah, I thought we'd do about 5% better. We didn't quite get there, but I figured it would look about like that. The mistake they've made is they've missed the opportunity to go to a hugely better place called the created future and bring that thinking back to the present and bring that experience back to the present and plan and act out of that thought process. Now, that's my definition of ambition. And I think it's right there on the edge of that presence. You can get consumed with it and make an idol out of it and become OCD with it. That's not good. But I think when you're in that pulse and you're going that direction, that ambitious side, I think this is a good way to do it. Go to a created future and go big or go home. Think of something amazing that'll really change your thinking and your processing to take you to a better place. And your destination is very much determined by the thinking and the actions that you perform, because your actions grow out of your thinking. And if you're thinking like the past, your future is going to be much like your past because you're acting and thinking the same way. We need to act and think differently if we want a different outcome. This is just common sense, but nobody ever slows down to really think about it. And if I'm coaching somebody, we'll put that chart out on a piece of paper and start to have a conversation, because coaching is just all about helping people see things that they didn't see and think about things that they don't normally think about and to do things differently than what they've done before to get a different outcome. Just a very simple chart. Again, I like simple things, but very profound. So I'll let you take that one in for a moment and then we'll move on. Okay. Let's pull this together for you today. If you've got a pen and a paper handy, I hope you do, I want you to review your notes and go back through them in your mind, or if you've written anything down, just review back through there and think about, what have I learned today? What concepts have come into my mind that are a little bit different, a little bit new? What have I been reminded of today that I've kind of known that I've kind of lost focus on? And out of that, most important moment in this presentation today is right now. What are you going to do about it? So many of us read things and we hear things and we listen to sermons, we listen to podcasts, we read books, we learn from people, and then we don't act. It's a deception to learn and not act. People have become information junkies with the internet and YouTube and all the information that's so readily available. We almost live vicariously in information and we never live the life. I'm asking you to make a change today, to take something that you learned today and actually do something about it. Actually take a step. Actually take a first step towards a new created future. Maybe it has something to do with you haven't been living in the present. Maybe it's a loved one that you have or a family member that you've been disconnected from and you want to get reconnected. You want to take a first step. Maybe it's an employee that you've been intending to reach out to and you just haven't taken the time. Maybe your employees are coming to you now and you're just not shutting everything down and truly choosing to be present with them. I don't know what your project is. I would love to know what your project is. I'd love to help each of you, but I'm saying choose one. Choose something out of today that touched your heart, that inspired you, and you said, I've got a clear next step to take. When you take that step, you break the inertia. Bodies at rest tend to stay at rest. You break that inertia, and you have now begun a new path toward a created future. But it's important to take the step. If you don't take the step and take the action, you will likely just stay where you are. And that would be a tragedy, I think. It would be a waste of an hour in my mind. 3 great offers today. I'll email you a PDF of these notes and these slides. Just ask me for them. Second, I would be glad to send you some other related articles if you're interested. Also, just go to the website. They're free there. You can look through those and browse those anytime. And third, I do have a mastermind group that is active right now, a couple of them. And this is where a group of people get together and we just take turns sharing each other's challenges in leadership and in business and even in personal life sometimes. And we help each other get very present. We're very present with each other for that hour every week. And we share with each other. And again, we look to other people to help us think outside of ourselves, because none of us sees ourselves in our situation, and getting that outside perspective from a group of professionals that have similar values is just so helpful. So you're invited. You just email me and say, I'd like to visit one of those groups to see what it's all about. Do that. And that would be my third offer today. And there is my email address. Email is the best way to contact me. And I would love to connect with every one of you on a personal level. If you'd like to do that, you just want to have a conversation, email me and say, Dave, I'd like to have a chat. Love to do it. That's what my life is about these days. And I get to know and meet the very best people in the world. It is just an amazing life. And I'd love to share some of it with you. So that is what we have today. We're done a little bit early. Nobody tends to complain about when you get out of something early. So I'm going to sign off and say goodbye. And thank you all for coming.